we've been crying out for it in the Premier League, haven't we, that the monopoly might get broken up. Just from a United point of view, I just hope and believe that United will remain the top dogs for a while into the future, and maybe for quite a bit longer than City fans are inclined to think.
So it's a good thing as long as United win?
Absolutely. Yeah. Always.
Is that about on the money, that, Arthur?
I think you're spot on there, Jim, yeah.
Yeah. You want City in there, but as long as they lose? Yeah.
Well, you know, I was too young, you might not think so, but to remember back when City and United were competing together.
It was
in the
fantastic, Arthur. It was unbelievable.
Manchester was obviously a hotbed of football. Then when I started playing, Andy's a bit younger than me, Merseyside obviously dominated for a long period. Everton had a really strong side along with Liverpool. But to have City doing what they're doing, although I want them to do well, not at our expense.
Yeah, well, I think that's because you're going to say exactly the same thing at the other side of the divide, isn't it? You want to play United in semi-finals, but you don't want to lose them.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I'm hoping that Bellamy, Tevez and Robinho will be like the Bell, Lee Summerby. I mean, I'm not quite sure who I'd put in that category for United, but, you know, they must have 3 decent players that would be put together in that same way. And hopefully that rivalry, in all seriousness, will go on now for years to come, because doesn't it just make you proud to live in this area, if you weren't already proud already to have 2 such superb clubs in our area?
Well, see, I was there when we were the top dogs, when City won the League, United won the European Cup, City won the FA Cup, and it was wonderful. But you sometimes hear, Andy, people say, oh, well, there's not really room for 2. Well, back then, there was a lot of room.
Yeah.
See, your football time you lived through, you were kids up against the big boys from across the way, and it's been that way too long, hasn't it?
For me, as for a City fan, absolutely. But as long as you win, it's all about winning, isn't it? Whether we beat them in the semi-finals, that's fantastic, and hopefully City will do that. It would have been great. The only thing better for a City fan would be get United in the final and beat them at Wembley. That's the only way to top a win in a semi-final for me. But then you run the risk of getting beaten in the final. That could be probably worse than losing the semi-final for me.
Do you know what the M40 would be like coming home after that, Andrew?
Who cares? Who cares? It was pretty bad after the semi-final against Everton last season in the FA Cup. We had a similar problem.
Can we talk about centre-backs? Because a blink of an eye ago, Arthur, United had Ferdinand and Vidic, and that looked a centre-back pairing ad infinitum. And a couple of seasons ago, City had Richard Dunn and Michael Richards, which was seen, again, as a long-term prospect. At the moment, Ferdinand, we don't know when he's going to be fit again. And then we had that very strange situation with Vidic yesterday. I remember before Vidic kicked a ball, me and you were doing radio together, and you said to me, I've just seen him bite a Kit Kat, I wouldn't want to tackle him. And now he goes off because something didn't quite feel right, Arthur. Yeah, it wasn't very Vidic-like, was it?
I was going to ask him for a bit of that Kit Kat. He was only a yard from me. But that was an FA Cup game. I think it was against Northampton or Burton or something like that. And he was only a yard from us. But he carries himself very well, and he looks the part. He's got that chisel look about him, and he's coming from like playing in Europe, he's like a British centre-half. He heads, he tackles, he just wants to tackle you, and he's a good passer as well. And it was unfortunate he didn't play yesterday, but you know, we won't know, we don't know what was an injury problem or a stomach problem or whatever, but certainly he's been so consistent over the last 2 or 3 seasons that you're going to miss him. And with Ferdinand, obviously with his experience, it has been a problem for us. Usually it's strikers and midfield players that suffer more injuries, but for some reason this season it's been our centre-backs that have suffered.
But there is this undercurrent, Steve, that his wife isn't that happy in Manchester, that he's been approached by a major Spanish club. He could be a target in the summer for a Spanish club. But it was un-Vidic-like, this idea of some vague injury. And Alex Ferguson's post-match comments, he was less than impressed, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, he said he couldn't offer an explanation as to why Vidic wasn't available.
I bet he'd asked for one, though.
I should hope he did, at the very least. I mean, I remember me and Arthur watching the game last season at Old Trafford, and they've got those huge electric scoreboards now around the pitch, like a lot of Premier League grounds. And Vidic went clattering into one of those at full pelt, didn't he? And it was the electronic board that needed treatment from the physio. Vidic just shook it off and wandered away. So, yeah, if you could discuss the whys and what falls of what exactly happened and why he didn't play. The thing that is unusual in a Manchester United context is that it was Vidic who evidently went back into the dressing room and told the management team that he didn't feel he was available to play. You normally get the sense it would be the other way around.
I would, certainly, based on what I've seen of the lad. So, Ian, on the City perspective, we've got this very strange centre-back thing where Mark Hughes spent 40 million quid on a centre-back pairing, and then we were shipping goals left, right and centre. Yesterday we had a young kid and Vincent Kompany. Well, there was a time when £7 million was a lot for a footballer, but respectively. but they looked quite comfortable, I thought. I know it was only Middlesbrough, but they still looked comfortable.
Well, I've got to correct you there, because Company actually played in midfield. It was Richards and Boyata who played in the central defence.
Company has been playing at back.
He was excellent at Wolves in the recent game. And actually, I was a little bit surprised they didn't keep him in that position, if I'm being honest. But those two did actually play well together. But we were discussing before what's the difference under Mancini, and there were question marks about Touré and about Lescott. And the difference seems to be simply about organisation. You can make the judgment about the individual players once they play regularly together under the new manager against some of, with the greatest respect to the team City have played recently, you know, the tougher sides like United and Arsenal and Chelsea, etc. They haven't really played anybody that hard so far. But certainly as a pair in a well-organised defence at Middlesbrough, who, to be honest, were not much of a challenge, they did look very good. Be interesting to see what the difference is in the game on Wednesday. But he is making do at the moment, and I suspect somewhere along the line he'll bring in a couple of players that he already knows from Italy. Touré won't be back at least for a couple of weeks, depends how his country does in the African Cup of Nations. Lescott's another 3 or 4 weeks away. Possibly they might try and rush him back for the second leg, but he might bring in somebody after this first leg. But it is a bit of a patched-up defence. I mean, Richards has been generally playing at right-back. He's not even got his regular first-choice left-back with Wayne Bridge being out, and he won't be involved. So, again, he's suddenly brought in Javier Garrido from nowhere, who's done pretty well. He took some stick, perhaps, in his last spell, but suddenly he looks, a slightly better player than perhaps he was before. So much of the credit to me must go down to the way that the whole back four's being organised.
Well, you've raised the situation about left-backs. We've got two of the best left-backs in the business here.
Where? Oh, sorry.
I was talking to you, Arthur.
I played it right,
but I'll ask you first, Andy. Although City have spent at left-back, they spent £12 million on Wayne Bridge. They brought Silvino in. Garrido was already there, and he played Garrido in front of Silvino in Bridge's absence against Middlesbrough. That's never looked totally settled, that position. I'm being unkind.
No, I look at both full-back positions. I wouldn't be surprised if Mancini looks at buying players for both those positions. Wayne Bridge, in my opinion, has not really pulled up any trees. Garrido, I'm not convinced about his defending at all. Going forward and on the ball, very capable, as is Silvino. But as we saw against Tottenham, Silvino, with his age, is going to struggle against quick players. And Garrido, defensively, his positioning is a bit dodgy as well. So I won't be surprised if Mancini looks at both those positions and probably a centre-half as well. But as Ian was mentioning about centre-halves, it's about the pairing, how the pairing works. And sometimes you have two great centre-halves who don't play well together. Look at Touré and Lescott, who are both decent players, but the partnership never really worked. You could see that they had no understanding. When Vincent Kompany's gone back there with Boyata, or he's played with maybe Micah Richards, the understanding seems better. So two slightly lesser players play better as a pairing, and that's what it's all about at centre-half.
Well, it's an interesting topic, this, Arthur. So let me come to you on this, because you always used to describe Big Gordon McQueen with his Polaroid swinger, but he did what he did. He got on the end of headers, he got tackles in, and next to him you had Martin Buchan, who was a proper player, and Steve Bruce, Gary Pallister, a stopper and a player. Yeah. The thing about City, someone said to me, and I thought it was quite close to the mark, was that when you saw Lescott and Touré play together, they were both the other one. They were both Martin Buchan. They were both Gary Pallister. Is that fair?
I think so, and it's like Andy says, they've got to complement each other. You can throw Paul McGrath and Kevin Moran as another pairing as well. They've got to complement each other, and I think, in fairness to you watch Man City more than I have, Lescott and Touré are both new players at the club, and it looks as if it's took them a little bit of time to settle. Big transfer fee for Lescott, and maybe that's weighing on his mind as well, but they've both looked a little bit shaky. But you've got to have them complement each other. One usually attacks the ball, and the other one can maybe play a little bit better with the ball on the ground.
Steve, while we're on the topic of centre-backs, I don't see anything like as much as you do of the lad, but when I did see him play prior to this injury break, I was very impressed with Evans.
Yeah, well, he fits into that sort of the category of the thinker, the Rolls-Royce centre-back, if you like, very good on his feet, evidently reads the game superbly well, brings the ball out of defence well, but tied into what you were just saying about Lescott and Touré, maybe there was a bit of that in the Evans-Brown relationship yesterday, because although Evans has been in and around the first team squad a lot more maybe than he'd have expected, Wes Brown has been one of those players who's been injured a lot. They probably haven't played together a great deal, and although they'll have been familiar training together on the touchline, maybe part of the reason of picking Vidic to play alongside Evans and not Brown, because it was going to be one or the other that went on the team sheet, was that partnership would have worked better for United against Leeds, Vidic and Evans rather than Brown and Evans.
In fairness to the pair of them, they're both played yesterday, and they've both been out injured for for long periods. Evans, his first game, I think, since he played Chelsea in November. And Wes has missed a lot of football, and he had an uncomfortable afternoon yesterday. And the goal that we conceded shouldn't have really... he shouldn't have been able to get a shot in the balls in the air for about 40 yards, and I'm sure Wes would be the first to hold his hand up about that. But certainly the two of them didn't have a comfortable afternoon yesterday.
Loads more football talk to come, and if you want to get involved, why don't you fire off an email today@channelm.co.uk. More of your emails and more talk with these four in 2.